What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Boiler Up with Rapheal Davis podcast, brought to you by AJ's Burgers, Beef, and Beer in West Lafayette. Check them out on campus. Brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Today, we got a very special guest, a great guest, a guy that I wrote my senior paper about. Having players being able to be paid in NCAA, to a guy I read his book that I think led me to become a Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten. So a guy that I look up to, a guy that Coach Painter gave each player his book and said, read this, let's make us a better team. I think it did. But nonetheless, Jay Bilas, how you doing, Jay Bilas?
I'm doing great, Raphael. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, Jay, I just want to, I know you don't got a lot of time, but I want to talk about your childhood a little bit. I know you grew up in Southern California. I knew you grew up a UCLA fan. So talk about a little bit how was that growing up? Where did you start playing ball? When did you realize that ball was something that you were going to take to the next level?
Yeah, I'm a typical, kid. I grew up in Southern California, not far from the water, and I played every sport growing up. But when I was about in third grade, my mom read a little blurb in the newspaper about a basketball league, the local little bitty league, and she took me up to the high school, and I went through tryouts, and I wound up never having really played organized ball before, making this travel team. They had a travel team at that level. So from fourth grade through eighth grade, I played with the same guys. We played all over Southern California, Nevada every weekend.
Nice.
And that's how I fell in love with it. I had a blast. I played with the same guys all the time. And then when I was tall at that age, or taller than most of my friends, but we had a tall group of guys on my team. And so it was a place where I could fit in. I really loved it. And by the time I got to high school, I got to be pretty good, and it was a point of pride for me, and it made me feel like I was worthy. I was a pretty decent student, all that stuff, but it was something I could stand out in, and people looked at you and they identified you as a player, and that made me feel better about myself, I'm sure.
No, that makes sense. And having a senior year that you did, having all the accolades coming your way, being the best player in California, how'd you end up in North Carolina with Coach K? I mean, Coach K was just starting out, had a couple seasons under his belt, so young coach at this time. He wasn't who he is now. Had a winning season, then a losing season, and then he gets one of the best recruiting classes in the country. What made you want to commit to him and commit to that program?
I just really liked him, Raphael. I just thought he was the right guy for me. I had I'd call it a difficult relationship with my high school coach, and I think all of us that played for him did. So after that, I kind of decided, you know what, this is the only time I'm going to get to choose who I play for, and I'm not screwing this up. I'm going to choose the right guy. And it was less about where I went to school and more about who I played for. And I came down to four guys. It was Coach K at Duke, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, Ted Owens at Kansas, and Lute Olson was at Iowa at the time, not at Arizona. He was at Iowa. So those were the four guys I wanted to play with, and Coach K was the least well-known, the least successful, the least experienced, but I just liked him the best.
What was it about him that stood out? I mean, I get what you're saying. I feel that way about Coach Painter. He's just a guy that you genuinely enjoy to be around. But was it something that Coach K, was it something that stood out about him?
Well, he was really genuine and still is, and he put his time in. Most of the guys did, but he did it seemed like a little bit extra. And there was just a factor where you trusted what he said. And it didn't come with, there weren't any banners hanging up where you could, he walked into the room and you were like, oh my God, it's Coach K. When he first called me, I'd never heard of him. I didn't even know I didn't know the name. And but after getting to know him, it was just something I really liked him. And I guess, I don't know, it's not a really good answer I'm giving you. It's hard to quantify or enumerate the reasons I liked him. I just liked him and trusted him. And there was something in my gut that said, this is the right guy. This is the guy you should hitch your wagon to when, their team wasn't any good. And, there were a lot of people after I made my decision, and we had the number one recruiting class there saying that was a huge mistake. He's not going to make it there. He's going to get fired, stuff like that. But I never really worried about that too much.
Right. And when you got to Duke, obviously as a freshman, I mean, being the number one recruiting class in the country with great players, you come in and you play. How was that being a freshman and you're playing now right away?
Eye-opening. We were very good, and we had a lot of talent and all that. But back then, it wasn't like it is now. Like you guys, your generation, you guys are all better players. Like it's not like everybody's better than they used to be, but generally the players today are better than they were 30 years ago or 40 years ago. It's not to say that Johnny Dawkins wasn't better than Carson Edwards or vice versa. You can argue individual players, but generally the players are better than ever now. The only difference between the game that you played in college, the game I played in college, is you played against younger competition than I did. Everybody stayed back then. And so you played against senior lottery picks, not freshman and sophomore lottery picks. And so the teams were more experienced and more mature and more powerful. And it's not to say that the teams today couldn't have beaten them, but if you look at football now, there's no football team in the 80s that could beat a football team now in college. There's no way. The football teams today would kick the hell out of the football teams of the 80s. I'm not sure that the basketball teams would, and it's only because of experience. So we had to play against Michael Jordan as a sophomore and junior, and Ralph Sampson was my first ACC game. He was a senior, like as a 22-year-old, first pick in the draft, three-time player of the year, and future Hall of Famer. Patrick Ewing was in school back then, stayed 4 years. Like that just doesn't happen anymore. So that was the difference. We were playing against men, and we got our ass kicked our first year, but then we figured it out. We got ranked and really good our second year, or third year, or fourth year.
What was it? Was you just think you guys took your lumps and your losses and you guys came together at the off season, or what kind of gelled you together to have that turnaround in the locker room?
Well, we were close to being good, but we got knocked back a few times, and we'd have close losses, and they started to pile. How things get snowball, and then every season is kind of like a prize fight where the bell doesn't ring. But when you're older and you've been through it before, you know how to handle it. And we didn't know how to handle it. So things kind of snowballed on us, and we had a rough season. But the off season, you get stronger. You know what's expected. You know what it takes to win, even though you weren't able to get over the hump that first year. And then we got really good. But even then, Rafe, we would go to we went to the NCAA tournament, and none of us had ever been there before. Like our coach had never been to the NCAA tournament before. So like my first NCAA tournament game was Coach K's first. He'd never coached in one before. So we kind of had to learn all that stuff together, and we figured it out. But it wasn't easy. Like now, everybody's got experience. A freshman comes in, they're playing with experienced players around them. The coaches have experience. That wasn't true when I played for Coach K. It was just different.
I get that. And during your time at Duke, you got the opportunity to play for the national team, USA team. You got the opportunity to play for Coach Katie. Do you remember anything from the experiences with Coach Katie? I know a lot of Purdue fans maybe remember that, our older fans, or I'm just curious myself. How was that? Because how is that?
I remember a lot.
You play for your. I'm sorry about that, but you play for your coach. I mean, obviously you play for a great coach, but then in the summertime you transition for another coach. He may be completely different from your coach. You know what I mean? So how was that with Coach Katie?
It was awesome. Like I love Gene Katie, and I'd walk through fire for that guy. He was so great. And it was really different than what I was used to. I'd never had a timed water break before, and he was a piece of work, man. He was all over us at times, but he was so supportive and such a great man. But we had some we were in West Lafayette for 2 weeks training.
Oh dang!
And yeah, so we stayed at a little Holiday Inn there and worked out every day. And he had. He had the first day. It was the U.S. men's national select team. So it was the team was picked, and so Coach Katie had a meeting the very first day, and had all our rooming assignments, practice times, all the things we're gonna. And then up on the kind of the chalkboard, he had written the team goals, and goal number 1 was win the gold medal, and goal number 2 was fight communism. and I was like, man, that's a pretty lofty goal we got. Like, how are we gonna accomplish that? But I always joke about it. Like he says, oh, I never did that. And I was like, yes, you did. That was absolutely up there. And so I would always joke with people when they'd laugh at that, saying, go ahead and laugh. But 5 years after we played, the Berlin Wall came down. So you're welcome. And I loved him. He was so great. And we had a blast playing for him. But he was hard on us at times. But off the floor, and he was just a prince of a guy, and I could see why Purdue players loved him and loved Matt Painter so much, because they've got some similarities. But just a wonderful, wonderful guy to play for.
Right, yeah, and just after that year that you had that experience, I believe you went back to Duke and you guys made that Final Four run, correct?
Yeah, we we had been ranked in the top 2 the year before in 1985 before I played for Coach Katie in the summer, and then we went back and we were ranked in the top 5 before the season started. We thought we were pretty good, and we kind of ripped through the year. We won 16 in a row, lost in the first game of the Dean Dome to North Carolina by a bucket, and then we ripped off another 21 in a row. So we went into the Final Four. We went into the championship game. We'd already won 37 games, and that was the most ever. At that time, it's been Kentucky won 38 a few years ago and eclipsed that. But we wound up losing to Louisville in the final, and that was really disappointing. They beat us by a bucket, and we thought we were better, but we got beat. And had we won that game, we would have been 38-2, losing only on the road to teams in the top 3. So it would have been a nice capper for a career, but we couldn't finish it off.
Right, no, and obviously you making that type of run yourself, having an unbelievable career at Duke, having an unbelievable run your senior year to the Final Four, kind of leads me into kind of this season, a weird season during COVID, and now we're in March. Kind of, what's your expectations for the bubble in the NCAA, or it's a weird setting. So how do you see it playing out for March Madness, the Final Four run this year?
Raphael, I'm just hopeful that everything goes well. It's been a really difficult year for everybody, but it's been more difficult on the players than anyone. Yeah. It's the players that have been living in isolation, not the coaches or staff. It's been hard on the coaches and staff. They've had a difficult job. But the players are the ones that don't get to see their families. The coaches and staff all go home at night and see their families. And so the biggest sacrifice has been made by the players. And, I don't know what the long-term cost of this is going to be. I know we haven't done this for anyone else in the college space. Like, when people say, well, the players want to play and all that, I get that. I want to work, and you do too. We all want to do what we do. But, you kind of have to ask yourself, what other person has any of these schools put on an airplane to go to an event this year other than an athlete? We haven't. No, we haven't done that for anybody. And so, we've kind of compromised a lot of what we say are our values in this thing. But now that we're here, I'm hopeful that it goes well and that we don't have any kind of crazy happenings like, positive tests or some sort of spread. I don't think we will, because the protocols are so strict. But, a lot of these players have worked really hard, or they've all worked really hard for it. But they put themselves in a position to finish this off in a nice way. I just hope they get the chance to do it.
No, yeah, I definitely think so. And I'm excited for where Purdue is right now coming into March. I feel like they're turning the corner. Feels like Jaden Ivey's coming to his own. Zach kind of came into his own in the season. Have you been watching Purdue lately at all?
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, it's amazing that they've been able to finish in the top 4 and double bye and all that stuff in the Big Ten, being the best league. And I watched them early, and I wasn't sure, just how good they'd be. And it's kind of testament to a team that has kept plugging and hasn't sort of let themselves be defined by what other people think, because they kept getting better. And I'm a huge fan of Travion Williams. I mean, he's a stud. So there's no reason that they can't beat anybody. And I'm not a believer that, like, I think Gonzaga and Baylor and Michigan are the best teams, but they're the best teams because they've been the most consistent at the highest level, not because they can't be beat. Like, Purdue's proven they can beat any of those three teams. Now, if it were a 7-game series, would I favor the three I mentioned? Yes, I would. But do I think that Purdue can't win this whole? They absolutely can win this whole thing.
No doubt, no doubt. I know a lot of Purdue fans will quote that from you. We'll use that on all over Twitter. So I appreciate that one. But no, from Jay, I was reading some articles, I was reading some things about you, and I read kind of the best advice that you got from Coach K, and I use the same exact advice. I say it's the best advice I got from Coach Painter. How important is it to be able to move on to the next play, whether it be in a game or just moving on to the next day in life?
Yeah, it's just kind of moment to moment with me in life. Like, you're going to have things, times where things don't go well for you, or they go great, and you have to move on. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself and enjoy a moment, but you have to move on to the next thing and kind of flush what has just happened, and don't carry it with you to your detriment by letting it distract you from the next thing you have to do. So, my dad was a big deal in that. He didn't have a nice phrase for it like Coach K did with next play, but my dad always used to say, concentrate on what you're doing while you're doing it. And it was basically about, like, it started when I was in high school, of him saying, quit worrying about stuff that doesn't matter right now. I think the first time he mentioned it was when he saw I was distracted during a game, and he said, what's bothering you? And he never gave me advice on how to play. He left me alone. But he had said, "What was something bothering you?" And I said, "Well, I got all this stuff that's going on. I got a test tomorrow. I got this. I don't know if I'm prepared for this, whatever." And he says, "Well, what good did it do you to worry about it in the game? Like, you can't do anything about it in the game. So as soon as you decide to play, and flush everything else. Like, let it go. And then when the game's over, flush the game and go get your schoolwork done, and move on to the next thing." And he goes, like, if you set aside time to go to the movies with your girlfriend, don't think about basketball or think about school or what. You've devoted that time to enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. But then when it's done, move on and concentrate on the next thing. And don't think about your girlfriend while you're in class, or, don't think about school while you're playing, and don't think about playing while you're in school. It's not that difficult. And he was right. And that's sort of the way I do things. I kind of, or try to do things. It's not easy. But you try, and if you make a mistake, or if you do something you wish you could take back, you can't take it back. Deal with it head on, and then move on.
No, that's great advice, and that's for any player out there listening, or anybody. That's amazing advice. I can't really add much to that one. And Jay, moving on from there, we have a couple questions from Twitter, but a question I've always wondered, since I was in college, since I kind of been following you on Twitter. I've always had a dying love for Young Jeezy with, the Thug Motivation albums and things of that sort. Where did kind of the passion for Young Jeezy? I see all the tweets coming from your account. Where did that come from? The every morning 6 a.m. Jeezy tweet.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd story. So I've listened to rap music. I first noticed it. I don't know exactly when it started. I'm not a rap historian, but I first noticed, like, rap music and started listening to it in the late 1970s. There was a band called the Sugar Hill Gang, and my teammates and I in high school just kind of loved it. They had a song called Rapper's Delight, and we knew every word to it. We'd sing it when we were doing conditioning work and stuff. And then when I was in college, a lot of my friends listened to Run DMC and all that stuff, and just really enjoyed it. And so when we were at game day, we were doing game day at Michigan State, I think, in probably 2010, 2009, whatever it was. And Draymond Green was wearing some headphones, and we asked what he was listening to, and he said, "I'm listening to Young Jeezy." And one of my colleagues says, "Do you listen to that?" And I said, "Well, actually, I do." And so it became a Twitter thing, and people were asking me, "Come on, man, you don't really listen to the Snowman?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do. It's not the only thing I listen to, but I do." And I put a couple lyrics out to kind of convince people, no, I know what this is. I listen to this. I really know. I do. And it's not like I'm memorizing this stuff, or I listen to it every day, all day, but I do listen to it. And so I somehow the lyric thing became a daily deal. and it kind of took off for some reason. But it's been fun, and I got I got to know Jeezy through it, and
Nice.
so every once in a while I get a chance to talk to him, and so it's been fun for me.
Oh, that's cool. That's super cool, man. Now, and Jay Bilas, I know I want to touch on something that's really important to me, and I'm heavy on. I know you're heavy into it because I've been following you since, like I said, I was at Loudon Prep my senior year in high school. Where did the I know you were on the NCAA, you're on the long wage players committee when you were at Duke. But where did kind of that passion for players' rights, kind of that you want to see players win just as much as the universities win? Where did that passion come from?
It's just an idea of what's fair and what's right. So when I was in college, you mentioned I was an athlete representative on the NCAA's long range planning committee. So I was on this committee with commissioners and conference commissioners and athletic directors and the like, and some of the great administrators really in NCAA history. And I didn't care for the rules that we had, and I said so. And I got shot down in these meetings, and the people were great, but they didn't care for some of the ideas that I had. And but back then, I felt like I was on that team. So when decisions were made, even if I disagreed with them, I supported them because I thought that's what you did. And I didn't want to go out and like trash the organization or trash the rules or anything because I felt like I sat in the room. The decision was made I didn't agree with, but I was there and I need to support it. But when I became a broadcaster and I'm a lawyer too, I know NCAA policy, and there are certain things I differ with, and so when I differ with it and I'm covering it, I say so. But I just don't see why it's so difficult that athletes be allowed the same economic rights as literally everybody else. Like there's no student on campus that's told what they can earn or accept, or they're restricted in what they can earn or accept. It's only an athlete, and I find that profoundly wrong to the point of being immoral. And I think it's especially poignant right now, given what athletes are going through in order to generate revenue for the enterprise.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw it, but there are all these economists have come out saying, for those of you that are putting out there this idea that only Trevor Lawrence or Zion Williamson are going to make money if athletes have economic rights, you're wrong. Like a lot of these female athletes that are in gymnastics or basketball or volleyball have huge revenue potential for name, image, and likeness, and in the social media space. So the revenue streams are gigantic for both men and women. For all sports, and the players deserve to be able to monetize their value because there's no reason. Amateurism does not do anything positive for the players. They're not a better player. They're not a better student. They're not a better person by virtue of their amateurism. All it does is leave more money for the enterprise itself and for the administrators and coaches and all that. They make more money, but it doesn't do one thing for the athlete.
And is amateurism, when you get behind those doors, is amateurism the reason that it is shot down every year while players cannot be paid?
Well, that's what they say. The reason is they just don't want to.
Right.
It's kind of like if I were benefiting for a rule where I didn't have to pay any of my employees, I'd say, hey, that's great. That's great. I don't have to pay anybody that comes over and performs services for me. That'd be awesome. I just have to give them their expenses. That'd be fantastic. They just don't want to. And amateurism, as you probably know, is sort of an old vestige of old England, and the handlebar mustachioed white men of the Ivy League. And really, it's just an exclusionary thing where if you have an amateur rule, the common man can't afford to play, and it's only going to be rich people. And that's what it was back when Wimbledon was an amateur event. It was all rich people won the tennis tournament, and same thing in the Olympics, and golf, you name it. It's exclusionary by nature, and that's how it started in college sports. Is the Ivy League wanted gentlemen playing against gentlemen. They didn't want the unwashed masses allowed in, and that's where it came from.
and knowing this and the things that are happening now, like you said, the NIL and kind of social media kind of boosting right now and players wanting more from themselves, where do you see basketball going? And you see different leagues start to come about. How do you think college basketball keeps its power?
Well, college basketball is going to be fine, but if all of these players start going, if you have all of the best players going to a G League or going into the NBA draft, if they're allowed out of high school, it's clearly going to diminish college basketball. It won't kill it, but it'll diminish it. I'm bothered by the idea that, rather than allow the players their economic rights, we would rather divert them from college altogether. And right now we're putting players at a choice. You can choose your education and sort of the normal socialization of college, or you can choose money right now. And I don't know. I don't understand why they can't have both when every other student is allowed to have both. Natalie Portman went to college and she acted and made a ton of money while she was in school, and nobody said she couldn't do that. Why are we doing this for an athlete and saying they can't? Nobody was saying, well, Natalie Portman shouldn't be allowed to do that because not every other student is able to do it. That's not fair. Nobody said that, but we use that lame argument with regard to athletes as if everybody gets the same thing in every endeavor, and they don't. So I just don't think the boogeyman is under the bed, in players being allowed to be paid, and I don't think it should stop at name, image, and likeness. All that is a compromise. Why shouldn't the players be allowed to receive whatever compensation they like? And if the schools want to pay them, go ahead and pay them. I don't see a problem with that. But look, I understand why the NCAA is fighting it, and it's because they want all the money. And I understand it. I just don't agree with it.
I'm 100% behind exactly what you just said. I understand it as well. I don't agree with it. I wish it comes to a better understanding. I wish players could benefit because of myself. I had to take an underpaid internship while I was at Purdue. I had a daughter at the time. It was a summer where I needed to work. I needed to make some money, and I needed to feed my daughter. The scholarship check wasn't enough, and I had to take an unpaid internship. Whereas though I could have got an internship with a company, Fortune 500 company, made a couple $1,000s that summer. So I definitely agree with you. I definitely think athletes should be even just be able to do a paid internship. So no, I think
Well,
I definitely agree with you there.
if you'll indulge me for a second, you just made so many great points there, and I'll tell you something, Raphael, that really frosts me, and it's when you as a player are referred to as a kid.
Right.
They'll say, "Hey, the kids want to play," or "the kids this," or "the kids are getting this or that." You weren't a kid when you were in college. You were an adult.
Exactly.
And there are it is not uncommon for adult students to be married, to have children while they're in college.
Exactly.
And the idea that somehow like you were infantilized by the system saying that you were a kid always really frosted me. And they do that on purpose. They do it to make it seem like, well, these are just kids. They don't deserve it. And, adults deserve it. They haven't made, they don't make adult decisions. They don't do adult things. That's always really bothered me, and I don't like it. And I try never to. When you're my age, you refer to 35-year-olds as kids. Yeah, he's a nice kid. I try to be really careful with that and make sure I say the players, because you were not a kid when you were in college. You were an adult. You might have been a young adult, but you were an adult, and you should be treated that way, just like every other student is treated that way and allowed to participate in commerce whenever they feel like it without restriction. And I don't see why athletes should be accepted in that way.
And just one more point to that, and just in a sense of just, and I say internships because say a guy goes to play ball overseas for 10 years or goes to play for 2 years. When they come back to the States, normally they don't have any work experience. And some companies want to see work experience. So I know you get the argument of, well, he got a free education, but he wasn't able to get any work experience. He didn't get any internship experience. So when he comes home from playing, it's stuck. You know what I mean? So normally players come home and they get stuck for a little bit because they don't have those connections that their classmates made in college at those career fairs while we were at practice. You know what I mean? So no,
I
I
know
definitely
exactly what you mean. Yeah, that's a great point.
I agree with all of that. And Jay, I know you got to head out, but I definitely appreciate you taking the time and talking with me. I've been looking forward to this conversation since I was 17. So if you're out there, please check it out. Like, subscribe, Bull Up with Rapheal Davis. Check out our website, RaphealDavisBasketball.com. We actually have a basketball camp starting next week for spring break, then the following week, then April 5th through 7th. We're raising money to send as many kids in this time right now to free basketball camp as we can. Definitely reach out if you want to donate on the website. But Jay, I really appreciate you joining us. I really appreciate the fight that you're fighting for the players. It's a great fight. If you ever need anything from me, definitely don't hesitate.
Well, Raphael, I hope you know what a huge admirer I am of yours and were as a player. I mean, I thought you were not just Big Ten defensive player of the year. I thought you were National Defensive Player of the Year. But it's a pleasure. Obviously, if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. But thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's big time. I really appreciate that.
Again, take care.
You too.